Which UFC champion has the most 5-star victories? This video is kind of modeled off the BoxRec site, you know, the one that keeps boxing records, although I do have a criteria that I'll outline. And overall, I'm just gonna give it a go while doing my best to be as consistent as possible. So what is a 5-star win? Usually it's a win over a great opponent with a great performance. And it's a win that comes over this opponent at a time where they're still considered to be in their prime or close enough to it. But you know, sometimes a 5-star level performance over a 4 or 4.5 star level opponent can sometimes be enough to pull the whole score up to 5 stars. Just like a strong showing in a very competitive fight against a 5-star opponent can bring the overall score to 5 stars. You know, razor close fights like Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski are always going to give the winner a 5-star victory, but a total shutout can do that as well. I'm also going to include 4-star victories, just to add another dimension, but the majority of wins that these fighters will have are going to be 3-star wins and not really featured in this video. So just to be clear, a lot of good and even very good wins will be called 3-star victories. These, for examples, would include title defenses that weren't majorly competitive on paper or in action, like Volkanovski versus Korean Zombie, or championship level fights that showcased a champion in poorer form than usual, against an opponent who wasn't overly decorated or revered as high level, such as Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes. So don't misread a 3-star win as a bad thing. 3-star wins are still great. I'm just looking for the 5-star wins, with the 4-star wins thrown in for color. Fights on the way up as a contender will rarely get mentioned, although some exceptions will exist. For example, and to use Volkanovski again, his win over Jose Aldo at featherweight is most certainly a 4-star win. But then I would say that Jon Jones beating Anthony Smith for the title is a 3-star win. You know what I mean? Anyway, the belt is important, but the level of opponent, the stage of their career when the fight has happened, and the performance itself is taken into account. A fight like Islam Makhachev's win over Arman Tsarukyan won't be enough to qualify for 4 stars. Sure, that's a very good prospect right there, but I won't be taking his potential into account. I do think it's one of Makhachev's best wins outside of the title, but it's not getting a mention here. Also, winning the belt in a fight is going to automatically give you 4 stars, but that may rise to 5 if the performance and the opponent were good enough to justify it. But either way, this was designed as a bit of fun, and though we will likely disagree on some of the finer details, I reckon this should be pretty straightforward. So let's get into it. Strawweight, Zhang Weili. So to kick things off, we have something of a dark horse in this race. Zhang Weili is a 2-time strawweight champion who won the belt each time in dominant fashion, destroying the newly crowned Jessica Andrade in under a minute to initially win the title. She then lost it to Rose Namajunas before winning it back with a total mauling of Carla Esparza, and both of these wins get her 4 stars. But her first 5-star performance, in my opinion, came when she took on the 115-pound goat Joanna Jędrzejczyk, beating her in a razor-close instant classic war over 5 rounds. Sure, it wasn't a dominant effort, but that's a 5-star fight, and as a result, it gets the 5-star treatment. The Joanna who rematched Weili Zhang was definitely a diminished version, out of action for over 2 years after this war, and on the cusp of retirement. It was a beautiful finish, but it's a 4-star win. This leaves the strawweight queen Zhang Weili with 3 4-star wins and 1 5-star win. Flyweight, Alexa Grasso. Alexa Grasso pulled off one hell of a shock to finish the great Valentina Shevchenko at UFC 285, an undeniable 5-star win over a legitimate GOAT candidate. But as things stand, that's the only 4 or 5-star win I can give Grasso. She definitely has her fair share of very good 3-star wins, but after going to a bizarre draw with Valentina in her last fight, only time will tell if this Mexican champion can build upon her one truly amazing victory. This leaves the flyweight queen Alexa Grasso with 1 5-star win. Bantamweight. The bantamweight title is currently vacant, and as things stand, no title fight has been set up in the absence of the retired Amanda Nunes. I mean, if you do want to look at the top-ranked former champion Juliana Pena, then you could very easily give her a 5-star win for finally dethroning Nunes. Apart from that, I reckon we'll also skip over the featherweight division, which seems to have disappeared entirely from the UFC rankings page. Flyweight, Alexandre Pantoja. Next we move to the flyweight division and the newly crowned Alexandre Pantoja, who of course has a legitimately excellent 4-star win over the great Brandon Moreno. And out of the 3 times they have fought, I'm only counting the most recent win for the belt. The other wins were at a much lower level. And for Pantoja, I did consider his wins over Brandon Royval and Alex Perez too, but both were coming off of losses, and Perez's activity has just been so low, far too low to justify his ranking. Pantoja has the potential to really make a name for himself over these coming fights, and I do think that a win over a fighter as good as Royval next time around in his first title defense would be another another 4-star win. For now, this leaves the newly crowned flyweight champion Alexandre Pantoja with one 4-star victory. Bantamweight, Shaun O'Malley. Shaun O'Malley comes in next with one of the more top-heavy careers we've seen. Guys like him who have had a very slow ascent aren't going to find themselves in 4-star range until they reach the top 5 or so. And given that O'Malley made a huge leap over most of his contemporaries to fight the number 1 Petr Yan, it makes sense that this was his first 4-star win. It was a great fight, a tight fight, but one that certainly showed us O'Malley's levels. As for his win over Aljamain Sterling, I think that's a 5-star performance. What he showed us in that fight, how he finished the champ, ending a long run as champion for one of the era's greatest bantamweights, a guy who had beaten Petr Yan, Corey Sandhagen, Cejudo and more. Yeah, O'Malley gets the 5-star treatment on this one. That leaves him with one 4-star win and one 5-star win. Featherweight, Alexander Volkanovski. Alexander Volkanovski might just be the best fighter of his era, and over these last few years he has been building one hell of a resume. His early win over Jose Aldo on the come-up is most certainly the type of contender fight victory that gets you an easy 4 stars. He shut him down entirely. On top of that, beating a guy as legendary as Max Holloway gets you 5 stars every time you do it. In their first fight, Volkanovski managed to freeze Holloway up. In their second, they shared the cage for one of the most high-level displays of MMA I've ever seen. And though Holloway dropped the champion twice, Volkanovski, in my opinion, won his 3 rounds fairly, taking the fight on the scorecards. And when the third fight came, Alexander had just ascended to another level entirely. Those are 3 5-star victories over a future Hall of Famer. Add in another pair of 4-star victories over Brian Ortega and Yair Rodriguez, and no, I can't really call the Korean Zombie win a 4-star win, it was just a bit of a mismatch. But anyways, yeah, Volk was always going to be a contender here. He takes home 3 5-star wins over Holloway and 3 4-star wins over his contemporaries. On a quick side note, if you're enjoying this video, be sure to let us know in the comment section below before leaving a like and subscribing so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. Lightweight, Islam Makhachev. Like Shaun O'Malley, Islam Makhachev had a pretty long road to the top 5, beating a lot of very good guys, underrated guys, even more so than O'Malley did, but not filling his resume with any 4-star wins. Like, I can't put Dan Hooker or Bobby Green or even Arman Tsarukyan, as I mentioned before, in that bracket. But when Islam got to the top, man, he did show up in a big way. And his opening 5-star victory over Charles Oliveira gave way to yet another 5-star win over Alexander Volkanovski. One of these performances was very dominant for Islam, the other was just about as tight a fight as we've ever seen, and both fights managed to confirm to me that this guy is one of the most talented fighters of his era. So yeah, this leaves the lightweight king Islam Makhachev with 2 5-star victories. Welterweight, Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards was kind of a tough one to nail down. The dude was underrated for years before eventually climbing into a title fight, and he had some excellent high-level 3-star wins beforehand, but I just can't give 4 stars to a Rafael dos Anjos coming off a 1 and 2 stretch, or even guys like Nate Diaz or Gunnar Nelson. No, but Edwards still has something up his sleeve. Back-to-back 5-star wins over Kamaru Usman turn a blank scorecard into a real contender for top 3 honors on our list. You just don't beat a guy like Usman without getting the highest possible grade, and the second performance was arguably more impressive overall than the first, despite the finish. This leaves Leon Edwards with a pair of 5-star victories. Middleweight, Shan Strickland. Shan Strickland has been the surprise package of the year so far, an unheralded contender who seemed to talk his way into a title fight, only to turn around and have an absolute field day against one of the greatest fighters of his era. Strickland gets an easy 5 stars for fairly comfortably beating a guy as good as Israel Adesanya, but that's just about the end of his scorecard. I can't give 4 stars to wins over Abu Smagomedov or Nasruddin Imavov in non-title fights, even Jack Hermanson and some of his earlier stuff. He's a guy with a bunch of very good 3-star wins, but this does leave Shan Strickland with just 1 5-star victory. Light heavyweight. Though Jamal Hill is technically still showing up as the title holder in this weight class, or at least on the UFC's website, the belt will be given to the winner of the showdown between Yuri Prochazka and Alex Pereira. For the record, Jamal Hill has 1 4-star victory, Glover Teixeira. Yuri Prochazka, you also have to limit to 1 4-star victory as well, also over Glover Teixeira, although the Reyes win was pretty nice. And for Poatan, there is most certainly a 5-star win over Israel Adesanya, but I don't know if I can call the Shan Strickland victory a 4-star win. Strickland has indeed grown tremendously in our eyes in such a short space of time, both in stature within the sport and in terms of his skill in the cage, but it is just hard to look at beating someone like Strickland, who was number 6 in the world, and put it on the same level as some of these other wins, especially with no title involved. We'll call it 3.5 stars. Anyway, moving on. Heavyweight, Jon Jones. And finally we come to the heavyweight champion of the world, Jon Jones, the man who most of you will have fully expected to come out on top under this criteria. And of course he does win by a landslide, but it also makes a lot of sense. Jones has just beaten so many icons, so many former champions in such dominant fashion that you just can't help but throw 4 and 5-star awards at him. Although the Ryan Bader win that got him the title shot was nice, in my opinion his first victory worthy of inclusion here was a 5-star mauling of Shogun Rua. This was a legendary coming-of-age performance for Jon Jones, a perfect display against a legendary opponent that showed the world exactly where the sport was headed. And then his legend-killing run of victories, Rampage Jackson, Lyoto Machida, Rashad Evans, Vitor Belfort, these were all wins that showed us something new about this young champion. He was evolving. The gap between himself and his rivals was growing. In my opinion, these are all 4-star performances, given the quality of the opposition. The same can be said for his win over Alexander Gustafsson, that tightly contested war over a guy in Gus who was a bad stylistic matchup for him and pretty damn good on his best day. I also give him 4 stars for the manner in which he handled the mauler in the rematch. No controversy that time, just total ease for the 3rd round TKO finish. He also dominated the future champion Glover Teixeira over 5 rounds, in another performance that made this man's dominance as clear as day. It's a win that has aged pretty well too. And that just leaves the 2 Daniel Cormier fights, victories over one of the greatest of all time, an easy top 8, top 9 fighter. And sure, one of them was technically a no contest, so I'll put an asterisk beside it. But if you're judging things purely off what happened in the cage, those are 2 5-star wins. 2 wins over a pound-for-pound great with a very confident display. Cormier had already proven himself at heavyweight in Strikeforce and basically went his entire career only losing to Miocic and Jon. Then finally we come to his heavyweight debut, a matchup against the best fighter in the division. And look, a lot has been said about how meek Ciryl Gane looked in that fight, how totally inept he appeared to be on the ground. But coming up in weight and taking on the number 1 guy, only to run through him in easy fashion, where he had barely lost before, the Ngannou fight was pretty close, and he beat that guy to win his 2nd belt after such a long layoff, yeah, that's another 5-star victory, just about. This leaves Jon Jones with 4 5-star wins with an asterisk, and 7 4-star wins. Jones is by far and away the most accomplished and longest serving champion on this list, but you guys already knew that. Volkanovski comes in 2nd place, while both Islam Makhachev and Leon Edwards share the 3rd position. Zhang Weili also deserves an honorable mention though. She has one of the best overall returns here, although just 1 5-star win. Interesting exercise, and I certainly had a lot of fun mapping it out. Anyway, what did you think of the video, and how did you feel I did with the criteria? It's a work in progress, so it's obviously not going to be perfect, but if we were to expand this into a video titled "Which UFC legend has the most 5-star wins?" is that something you'd be interested in? We'd put the likes of Jones up against more fitting competition, Anderson Silva, GSP, Mighty Mouse, and so on. Perhaps factoring in losses could be an idea, 4-star losses being pretty damn bad, and 5-star losses being something akin to what happened to Ciryl Gane at UFC 285 against Jon Jones. It's just an idea anyway, so do let us know in the comment section below before leaving a like and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss a single upload. Thank you for watching.